Which I'll start the recording here. Hi everyone, this is Radhika Iyengar from the Center for Sustainable Development at the Earth Institute, Columbia University. And here we are with two wonderful scientists who work on a very, very important topic. And I thought that this topic has come up again and again, this issue of plastic pollution. Every time we've had a discussion with lots of our eco ambassadors, this topic keeps coming up again. And I thought that it would be great to have our wonderful, panelists come and join. And this will be really a panel where we will have questions for our panelists, and they will explain their journey of where they have come, why is this topic important from their perspective. And I'm so grateful that we are collaborating with Worldwide Teaching on Climate and Justice with David here. He's given us this platform to really take this whole discussion forward, and many different collaborators are here. He's been doing an amazing job of having so many different environmental discussions with Bard College Network. And he's really done a wonderful job of having all these events being placed on their website. So we have so many different dots coming up, and it's great that we have one dot from our side, which is from India and from this panel. So without further ado, I will just do a brief introduction of our two panelists today, and I'm sure it will not do justice. So we will ask the panelists again to do a review of their journey so far from their perspective, and then we can open it up to questions. So we have Dr. Beizhan H. He's an Adjunct Associate Professor of International and Public Affairs and a Lamont Associate Research Professor at Lamont-Doherty Earth Observatory. If people don't know what LDEO is, I will write the link in our chat, and definitely look at the laboratory. They do wonderful research on climate-related work, and it's an integral part of the Earth Institute and the Climate School at Columbia University. At LDEO, Dr. Beizhan H has established an environmental organic geochemistry lab with ability to extract, isolate, and identify organic contaminants and biomarkers for environmental and biological samples. And he's been working on air pollution issues also in New York City and in Beijing, China. He's also conducting the ecological impact of microplastic in estuaries and oceans. So we'll get to hear from him soon. And then we also have Dr. Joaquim Goes. He's a Lamont Research Professor at Lamont-Doherty Earth Observatory, again at Columbia University. And his research focuses on understanding how ocean ecosystems and planktons are responding to climate change. So what are the impacts on the ocean's ecosystem on the climate change? I think that's such a relevant topic, and we want to get to know more about his work. He uses his background in biochemistry to study organisms at a cellular level, and combines this with his expertise in ocean color remote sensing coupled with physical biological modeling to address large-scale climatic questions. And he uses his background and his research to mentor undergraduates, graduate students, postdoctoral students in his lab. And I think that's really been fascinating, because he's been able to bridge this gap between school students and lab work at a really renowned university. So, and really published a lot of articles, and has been able to do a lot of research on microplastic. You can mute, please. Great. Great. Please mute yourself when you're coming in. Otherwise, it disturbs the entire panel as we go along. Thank you so much. And we have a lot of students here and a lot of teachers joining. So without further ado, I'll ask our panelists, Dr. Beizhan H first, to just describe his journey on why he started doing work on plastic, and what made him take this journey. And did he, when he was a high school student, did he did you think of doing microplastic research? And just your background, and then we'll ask Dr. Joaquim Goes to do the same as well. Dr. Yan, I think you're muted, Dr. Yan.
Thank you, Radhika. Thank you for this wonderful introduction. So, as Radhika mentioned, I'm a Lamont Associate Research Professor here at Lamont-Doherty. And so I starting this microplastic work is actually under the, the help with the Joaquim, who is actually another panel person here. So one time about like 4 or 5 years ago, he showed me this picture that he took using the flow cell that he when he cruised his collecting samples in the coastal area close to the South Korea, and then he showed me these pictures. Each individual was so identical. A lot of the particles, which is probably I kind of like a zero point 0.1 millimeter size, and they're identical. And there was a lot of them in there. So he definitely said, Beizhan, there are something there. This is microbeads coming out from these cosmetical plants. So I was shocked when I see these pictures because at that time I know there was plastic was a trouble at the time because I know some of the news about the seabird, and also turtle get and being stuck, the plastic waste getting stuck in the intestines, cause they are starving. So I didn't realize that it was also such tiny thing can also get in environments, being weathered, and then cause the like potentially trouble for the phytoplankton, zooplankton, etc. So I was shocked, and then I started looking into how since we know that it's in the the South Korea area, but it also potentially also in the New York area. So then I started collaborating with the Riverkeeper, which they have a boat. And from this Riverkeeper, and then we collected some of the samples with the Riverkeepers, and from there we started the microplastic distributions, and we also deployed in situ some of the in situ the experiments to figure out whether those plastics was also absorb the pollutants and then carry them from this New York City waterways to the other areas like the Atlantic, Long Island Sound, or goes to even Atlantic Sea, etc. So so that's kind of starting of this research, and then with the help from the Columbia, we have a NIH Center for Environmental Health in North Manhattan, and there we get some of the pilot the support. So, and I starting to study whether we can have some, we know that this 0.1 millimeters, but this, can we see other particles down to like nanometers? And we know if it's nanometers, that's even more trouble because currently they're called nanoplastics. These nanoplastics can be even more trouble because, they can get into people's blood. If you drink it or you breathe in, they can get into people's blood and then transport to the different organs. For example, can goes into the liver, and can goes to the like kidney, can cross the blood-brain barrier, getting the brain, and also can go across the placenta, goes to baby sites, fetus sites, affecting the future generations. So that's why I was starting collaborating with a lot of researchers coming from Columbia Medical School, and in there we studied, basically, how whether we can identify those nanoparticles in the tissues, and whether they are cross the placenta, whether they are cross the blood-brain barrier, etc. So this is kind of the work we are currently doing. And so we also, I'm also collaborating with a professor at Columbia Chemistry Department, and we're using certain like advanced Raman techniques to really identify nanoparticles down to like 100 nanometers. So for the questions that Radhika mentioned, when I was high school, did I expecting the plastics pollutants? Was actually no. At the time, the plastics, I was actually grew up in China. So of course, at the time, we also used the plastic to cover the, like to use as a greenhouse, the facility, so that the like some of the vegetables and all, can be growing inside before even that the season starts. So we do use the plastic during the time a lot. However, we didn't realize that it's a huge issue in the future until recently we saw this the whole Earth became a plastic Earth, and the whole our environment because are inundated by those pollutants, plastic pollutants. So that's my introduction. I mean, it's a little bit too long, but I hope you enjoyed. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yan. Over to Professor Goes to discuss his journey and anything that he wants to share.
Thank you, Radhika, and thank you, David, for this opportunity to speak to students and teachers in India. It's really a pleasure. And I would like to thank Beizhan because he has helped advance this work forward. I was born actually in Kenya, but I grew up in a tiny state of India called Goa. And so my house was not really far from the oceans, and my parents always wanted me to become either a doctor or an engineer, like all Indian students. But I loved the oceans, and when I graduated, when I finished my bachelor's degree, I actually joined the National Institute of Oceanography in Goa, and then from there I went to Japan to do my PhD. And then I came to the United States. But my work is really focused on how climate impacts ocean ecosystems, as Radhika mentioned. And one of the areas that we are looking at very closely, because it has changed so dramatically over the last 10 or 15 years, is the Arabian Sea. And I'm sure most of you who are fish eaters will know that the fish landings have gone down. But today we are going to speak about plastics and how I got involved in plastics. And Beizhan mentioned a cruise that I spend a lot of time at sea on ocean-going research vessels. And on one of our cruises, I had an imaging system that was meant to look at plankton in the water. And as we were sampling around the Korean Peninsula, we did see a lot of unusual round particles. And it turns out later on, they were beads, microplastic beads, and that the source was from a cosmetic industry. And Korea is very, very well known for its cosmetic industry. So when I came back, I shared this information with Beizhan, and we decided to do a similar kind of a study locally in our waterways around New York City. And even here, we had not thought about it, but our waters are full of plastics. And the source of these plastics is varied. It comes from our clothes, it comes from the detergents we use, it comes from many, many sources. Some of the shampoos and soaps that we use contain plastics as well. But what Beizhan helped to do is to show that these plastics are not only harmful by themselves, they get ingested into the digestive systems of marine animals. But he showed that they become really good surfaces for absorption of chemicals like pesticides, pharmaceuticals. And this is where the problem is compounded, not only by the plastics, but by plastics being a surface for addition of these organic compounds that are harmful to human beings and to marine life. So Beizhan led a paper that we published about 2 years ago. This just goes, we are just starting this work, but most of my work in my lab has been with students. When we do work with students, we deal with projects that really concern their day-to-day lives. For instance, we get a lot of shrimp in the United States from all over the world. And so we did a simple project where the students go to the grocery stores and get shrimp from different parts of the world. They look at their digestive system and then look at the plastics inside them. They look for plastics. And you can begin to see how different countries, you see the amount of plastics in the shrimp differs. So these are kind of small projects that we do from time to time with students, and that way we make them aware of the harmful effects of plastics, and they go and tell their parents, and then the parents, help mobilize the town hall meetings where the students speak, and then it gets a movement started. So I'm hoping that Radhika has got the same idea in mind, that we need to start a movement to stop the oceans from getting polluted with the plastics. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Goes. I think this is really important that, scientists are helping us to see how we can start this movement against plastic pollution. And so here is an opportunity to ask them on where does plastic, pollution come from? What are they doing? What are the things that we can do? And then take this collective movement forward. So there is one question. This is really I will not ask a lot of questions here. This is really a students platform and teachers platform. So please ask questions as we go along. There is a question here from K. Sindhu. Where do microplastics come from? So maybe I can add to that in terms of what is the most, plastic pollution areas? Is it industries? Is it homes? Is it how we wash our clothes? Is it just how we, live our lives? So based on your observations, both the panelists, I wanted to ask you what is the major source of plastic pollution that you see around in the United States or in other countries that you've worked in?
So Beizhan, do you want to take this question, or should I?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
let me. I can start and then you can add. So, plastic come from the multiple sources, and basically is when you think about it, if you have the plastic bags, like single-use plastic bags, they are being disposed to the environment, and what they are doing is being with the natural force, like under the exposure of the UVs and the wind, and also maybe a tide, they are being broken down into small pieces, and the small pieces keep going, and then they goes to microplastic or even lower. Another source is Joaquim mentioned, they are potentially can come out from the micro, the beads coming out from cosmetic or from any other usage. Another potential source is also the pellets. The plastic pellets being used by industry a lot. They are making, when they are, for example, if you plastic plants, they are trying to make plastic products, they are actually use the plastic pellets from some of the company made by like a downstream of the petroleum products, and they are use these pellets first to so that the pellets because these pellets can easily be transported to the different areas. So they are use these pellets and then to making a different products, etc. So there are quite a lot of the other sources. For example, the plastic would be used for almost in everywhere in your life. For example, in the car, in infrastructure, in buildings, in all over the places. So there was as one system to find out is about 8.3 billion metric tons of the plastics was already being made, and about 2/3 of them was being discarded to the environment. And this plastic that we see in the ocean was definitely coming out from most of them that will come from the source from the land use, from like estuary or from air transport deposited in the ocean, etc. Another potential source is also the fishing gears. So there are fishing gears being left into the environment, into the oceans when they are finished sometimes, and they are some loosely get the break, and so they are get left into the environments. So that's potentially also the plastic. Yeah, Joaquim, could you could you add something?
Yeah. Thank you, Beizhan. Yeah, so as Beizhan mentioned, single-use plastics are probably one of the worst offenders. And it's not that we do it intentionally. Like when we buy a bottle of Coke or a Pepsi, it comes in containers, single-use plastic containers, or we drink, out of a mug at a restaurant. We use straws. And typically what the establishment will do is it will take the plastic waste to a landfill. But the problem is that there are a lot of leakages along the way, before it reaches the landfill, and some of that actually makes its way into the ocean. So the pollution of our oceans is not intentional. We don't go out to sea and dump our plastic bottles over there. It's unintentional. But with a little bit of more judgment, we can stop this plastic from getting into the ocean. There are ways that we can do it, by incentivizing every time you purchase a Pepsi, and if you return the bottle, you get about 5 paisa back or something like that. So if we try and establish this kind of protocols at the very outset, I think we'll be able to reduce plastics coming into the oceans. So the biggest source of plastics, as Beizhan mentioned, is domestic. By and large, plastics that are used in various industries are recycled. Like the computers that we use, they're broken down, the plastics are broken down, and then they're made into some other products, or they are reused to make something else. But single-use plastics are the biggest offenders in the ocean.
Thank you to our panelists. I think that really addresses the question that we asked: where does plastic pollution come from? So that's we know that it's coming from a lot of households. Then all the nets that are left over. So those are big items that we need to really think of. There's one question from I think Deborah here. From Columbia University, is it possible that the polymer change from waste plastic be broken down at a molecular level and repurposed to form new polymers?
That's a great question, Deborah. So thank you for attending this event as well. So it's possible to go to individual single molecular level because this is polymers. And but one of the issues is you also being when you do the really down to the single molecular levels, you're also being exposed by the UV light and all sorts of these weathering processes. So most of the time, you probably will get oxidized. So the polymer was not really the polymer, that type of polymer anymore, because it's already being oxidized. Environments changing those single part molecules. So you potentially would have a lot of this being oxidized. So they are pretty much being changed. It became a different type of the pollutants. And the reason is also they are, because under that conditions, the link or bound would be broken down. So you probably get the more small pieces rather than a whole, like a long chain of the polymers. They also can attach to the surface of the other particles. And under that conditions, they are probably most likely they're not go meet with other polymers, single polymers to forming a group. So they are most likely they are actually attached to the surface of the other particles. Because remember, in the environment, we have a lot of these nano and also micro, the particles, not only just the plastic, but we also see like a black carbon. You also see like a silt particles, and also you see the other rock component like a quartz, etc. So those kind of the providing a good surface, and also we have natural organic matters. This natural organic matters also is the best for the plastics particles, polymers be that are being dissolved inside or attached to these particles. So basically, yes, you can go down to a small, tiny, polymer molecules. However, they are already being changed by environment. So, Joaquim, you have any add-on?
Yeah. So Deborah's question about can it be broken down into also smaller, useful polymers? Is that correct, Deborah?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So there are many studies, including at Columbia University, where they are now looking at ways to break down this plastic waste, and one is through the use of bacteria, and there's under certain conditions you can break down this plastic particles into fuel, into energy. And it can be in the form of, say, for instance, alcohol and so forth. So there are studies going on all around the world trying to, try to repurpose or reuse these plastics for fuel. But the research is still in the lab, and the amount of energy I think that you need to put into getting it to the stage where it is viable economically is still at an infancy. But I think if the work with bacteria is successful, that would be probably the cheapest and easiest way of doing it.
So to add on that, recently we are looking into this kind of potentials, Deborah. So I'm actually collaborating with the Columbia Engineering School, civil engineering. I'm my friends, Joaquim Yin, and he's a professor at the chemical civil engineering, and we are considering how we can, that the basically, as you mentioned, goes into breaking these polymers into by the bacteria or by the there was a new technology called, actually it's fermentations, like you putting into plastic into the cell leaf, grass leaves, and they make the environments because during that times the temperature was rise, and also there was a lot of bacteria living in this kind of composite, and then the black carbon, plastic became depolarized, became smaller pieces, and it turns out they are very kind of efficient and also in a natural way, relatively in a natural way. So then what do we think about it? We can potentially use this, like a polymers, small polymers, so that we can add it into the infrastructures. Like, for example, one thing we are considering is adding into the, asphalting, reclaimed asphalting pavement, because you have a lot of this pavement coming out from the highways, right? Like asphalt before. And so how do you reuse it? So in order to reuse it, you need to heat it up and then add a new kind of asphalt to make it reuse it. And we are thinking about the plastic potential at that kind of polymer level, like not long chain, but becomes dimer and monomers, like dimers. So basically, the two or three of these, polymer, the constructions. So they are this kind of the basic, compounds, is that we can reuse it, so that after they're breaking down, with those kind of polymers, we add into this asphalting, and it can be increase the performance of the asphalting. So that's one of the things we are trying to apply, and so this is kind of one of the research we are doing. Another study that many other studies, as Joaquim mentioned, there was a lot of these other studies that use the bacteria, especially use this kind of iron reducing bacteria to see whether they are breaking down the polymers. However, currently, most of even naturally using the bacteria and also engineering bacteria, they are pretty expensive, and in terms of how to break, to make it break it down very thoroughly. So it's still, this is ongoing researches, and hopefully in the future we can really have some of the being engineered bacteria that can really efficiently breaking down different type of the plastics. Yeah.
So much. I think that was a great discussion to see what is the future of research in this area. There's a question from Zora about recycling, and I just want to add, some countries do a great job of recycling, some countries not really, they don't really have a market, and there's lots of commingled trash that gets collected. But any reflections from both of your end to see if recycling can be a solution, or should we try to come up with different ways on the production side of plastic that can stop this menace?
Yes, so many organizations are now advocating for the 3R principles. So reduction at source, recycling as much as possible, and repurposing. So at the reduction stage, they advocate that you start working with agencies that produce these plastics, like for instance, plastic producing companies that make these bags, for instance, they should start working with NGOs and government organizations. These PET bottles that are used in sodas. At that stage, if there's some incentives for the user to return the plastic back to the manufacturer, and if he can use it, or if that company can use it, that's one stage. So reduction at the source. Then recycling, once the plastic is produced, before it's taken to landfills, can it be used for something else? And there are so many projects happening all over the world. Beizhan mentioned asphalting of roads. It's happening in some countries. Some countries have already started using this plastic for paving roads in small towns and villages, and it has been used successfully because it is hydrophobic, so water doesn't stick to it, so it becomes a perfect surface, and it can last a long period, like you have, normal paved roads. And there are so many other, they've been used in construction work, building, mixing with cement and so forth, and used for construction. So that is recycling that can take place. And repurposing is when you start using, just like this recycling, you start using it for something completely different. We do get a lot of plastic waste in our lab, and we had a student who came in and showed us how she could use these plastics in the fashion industry. So when you come up with creative ideas of recycling also and repurposing, I think we can reduce the amount of plastics that eventually get into the sea. And the problem right now is that everything we use is something connected to plastics. When we wake up in the morning, the switch that we put on is plastic. We go to use our toothbrush, it's made out of plastic. And you go on your list, you pull your camera, it's made out of plastic. So we are in a world now where we have to live with these plastics. But the trick is, once we are done with the lifetime of the product, we have to find clever ways of reusing and repurposing them. So even the clothes that we use contain plastics. Once upon a time, it was all cotton, but now with the new technologies that have, with polymers being used in clothes, every time we wash our clothes, a lot of fibers get into the ocean. So that is another big source of pollution.
I think we have lots of teachers here also, and they have been, I hear that a lot of interesting projects to do the 3 Rs in the school have been initiated. So maybe asking 1 or 2 teachers, Srinivas, if you can identify someone from Telangana. Lot of teachers have joined here from Hyderabad. Preeti ma'am, Neeru ma'am, I can see joined from Delhi. Are they doing anything at the school level to focus on plastic pollution, focusing on the 3 Rs specifically?
Thank you, Radhika. I'm sure Neeru would want to share what her school, the small efforts being made by her school.
Yes,
good evening, everyone. Good evening, Radhika ma'am. So it was very interesting talk by Dr. Beizhan and Dr. Joaquim. And yes, the 3 Rs which we have said, the repurpose, recycling, all these things we have also started in our school. And you won't believe, like last year during the pandemic, we were online. We were not going to school, but still we conducted a mega plastic collection drive, an association with an NGO. It is basically an organization, ICPE, Indian Center for Plastic in the Environment. And we collaborated with 4 more schools in the nearby area, and we collected 225 kilograms of plastic. And the entire plastic has been sent for recycling. It had sent for recycling. And this month, from 11th of April, we have started with the 2nd phase of mega plastic collection drive. Now we are offline, we are going to school regularly. So we are hoping to have double the collection from 225 kgs to almost 500 kgs. We are planning, and this time we have almost 60 schools who are participating with us, collaborating with us on this project of mega plastic waste collection drive. And yes, as you said, repurpose. So we have used the old plastic bottles into the stools, into the planters in our school. We were doing it from past many years. And yes, we were not sending it for recycling, but from after coming in contact with ICP from past 2 years, we have started with this drive, and we are happy that now plastic is being sent for proper recycling and it is not going to the landfills. And yes, but the first thing which Beizhan sir said about single-use plastic. So phasing out single-use plastic was the first thing we also did in our school. And no, we completely come to the steel cutlery in the school. So no plastic utensils or no plastic cutlery is being used, or the straws are made up of paper plates, paper straws, or the biodegradable material straws. We are using all these in our school cafeteria. So these are certain initiatives taken by our school for reduce the amount of plastic. And of course, in collaboration with all the parents and the students and the entire community. We cannot do it alone.
That's actually a fascinating example of how efforts at the level, at school levels, can be the success stories actually need to be passed on to different other schools in the locality. So I would advocate that you enhance your network, try and get other teachers involved in the same initiatives. And you mentioned something that's really important. When you repurpose this plastic, like you said that you use them for planters and all, that itself is another project that you create. That if you see the student growing a seed in this little container that would have been thrown out, and if the students start seeing the seed growing in that little container, it's fascinating for them. So I think one of the things that you should do is to try and expand your network, and this has to get to all other schools and as many schools as possible, not only in your state, but in other states as well.
Yeah, I agree with Joaquim that Nairobi, your school did a great job, and which is also which more important thing is also the kids, the school students. They are also affecting the whole society because they come back home with all these knowledges, and then they will talk with their their parents and the grandparents, changing some behaviors. And this is from the root, changing the behavior, society behavior, and that was actually very efficient for the futures, especially this, when the students change their concept, then every society would also social society would also respond to that, and that's very efficient for the future. For we get to reduce and recycle this plastic. I mean, they did a great job.
Thank you, sir.
I'd also like to add, what we've done at school with the old bus tires. When the bus tires wear off, the children paint them, and we kind of convert them into tire sofas for them to lounge around on the playground and at different places in school, so that we don't.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, they're all used all over. And we banned styrofoam in our school canteen completely. So children spoke about it, spoke against it, and
one of
cafeteria had to stop using styrofoam.
We have one of our really close teachers over here who teaches in a high school in New York, and she's has been working with us on the other end of the spectrum. So not so much with the part that you're working, the recycling part, but she has been working with us to get people to understand what are the impacts of plastics on marine life. And so she has done some really nice projects with us, looking at how plastics are accumulated in oysters and in fish. And she will give you, if she's still online, I would like her to say something as well. Deborah, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. Thank you, Joaquim. With Dr. Jan's help, as well as Dr. Go's help, we were able to discover back in 2018 that most of the shellfish products that were sold in grocery stores had microplastics in them. And it was revealed that to my students who diligently followed the protocols that Dr. Goes laid out for us, that no matter what country we found these shellfish originating from, there was evidence of microplastics in their tissues, which led to lots of questions by the students. 2 students went on to enter projects following their own questions. One student wanted to know if there was differences in the amount of microplastics between farmed shrimp and wild caught shrimp. And he entered that into the Massachusetts State Science Fair. I think that at that level, even the judges were not understanding the complexity and scope of the problem. He had difficulty actually getting them to understand that this was a global issue. Another student went on to pursue whether the oysters that are being placed around the waterways of New York City in order to remediate some of the pollutants in the waterways of New York contain microplastics. Her project won an environmental award. And so she analyzed microplastics in oysters around New York City waterways. These are some of the questions that the students themselves pursued. And with the mentorship of Dr. Goes and Dr. Jan, it's been bringing them into real world problems. And they actually become much more engaged with science. That they are no longer afraid of chemistry. They're no longer afraid of walking into a lab because they're pursuing their own burning desire to know.
It's fantastic, Deborah. Yeah.
Very true, very true.
Are there anyone from Telangana? I think Ms. Srilata wanted to say something, share her ideas on what they've been doing in schools in Hyderabad. Ms. Srilata? Or anyone else from our schools in Telangana? And I know you've been doing such wonderful work in your schools based on our previous interaction. So just giving a space here if they want to share some ideas from all the amazing work that you've been doing.
The teachers from Telangana, you can speak what type of programs you are doing in your school. So as well as to reduce the plastic, you can also speak on that, as well as you can ask some questions too. From Telangana, Nairobi, there are a lot of teachers has joined here. If anybody want to talk, you can unmute and you can talk.
Or
Yeah.
any students from Telangana, I know you've been doing an amazing job. All the eco ambassadors there, if they would like to share any ideas.
Good evening, sir, madams. I am Masudan Reddy from Telangana, Narayanpet district.
Yes.
Earlier, before Corona pandemic, in our schools, we are conducted some innovative activities. In those innovative activities, we practiced in the schools no plastic zone. So we declared some of the schools as the no plastic schools. But after this pandemic, this is not properly maintaining. Even schools also running in small, working days are very less. So that was practiced for 3-4 years very efficiently. It showed much impact on the students also. What they are learning in the schools about the 3 hours or 4 hours, they practiced what they are learning in the textbooks also. This is the, I think this is the practice was made by the Telangana schools. Thank you.
Wonderful idea, Mr. Reddy. I think we need to take this on, make schools no plastic zone, not just in Telangana, but here also in the US. Hopefully we will get there with our eco-ambassador strengths and teachers and students asking for similar work. So the idea of this panel is to get answers from our scientists and also see what we can do collectively, maybe start a campaign, maybe have some challenge for students or something that we can come up together. So maybe we can continue thinking on those ideas. But I also want to give a few more chances for our schools. So many schools I know in Telangana have joined this call. Any students, any teachers who would like to share what they've been doing?
One activity I might suggest that is safe to do during a pandemic is to do a simple transect in a park, a beach, where students can learn how to collect data and basically in maybe a 30-meter stretch, go in various quadrants and have students actually discover and count plastic waste that they find in common public areas. It helps them to engage in a way that works with all elements of science and math.
Great idea, Deborah. And actually here, just to give an example from New Jersey, there is a student in a high school here in Melbourne, and Morgan Greenspan, she and her colleagues have come up with this challenge. She will be going to fourth graders across the schools in our district, and she, along with her group, have made this small company called Don't Be Trashy, DBT. And she has been able to take this idea that for a month, if you collect all the trash in the house, and we are boiling it down to 1 week for the fourth graders, and then see what is the trash that is being collected, what is the amount of plastic. As you're saying, Deborah, it's very much similar to what you mentioned, counting, and then what type of trash is collected. Are wrappers collected, are chocolate wrappers or chips wrappers, and all those different things, what are they collecting at home, and how do we reduce that trash? So students are supposed to, grade 4 students are supposed to take the lead from Morgan and do this challenge for a week, and then come back and share their ideas on how to reduce trash at home. And again, plastic, I'm sure, will come up as a big problem at homes also. Any other?
Brilliant idea.
Radhika, I just have a question for our panelists. I don't know. However, this could be my personal observation that whenever we talk of plastic, at any session, we make plastic sound like very morbid kind of thing. And it's the devil in our life, like now maybe a word that would be more effective than saying just devil. And yet, I think that it's too much an integral part of modern life. We don't find the replacement of plastic. Even our water tanks that store drinking water for us is also made out of plastic. I'm just wondering, do you think it'll help if we shift our approach from making plastic sound like a killer, to something that has made life very easy for many industries, including the medical world, but it is how we use it and how we dispose it. Because somehow the opening of every session on plastic makes it sound like, oh, something that we need to drop like hot bricks, which is really, and then you realize after some time, because to reduce, recycle, and reuse, we even added a refuse, that don't try and refuse anything that is sold in plastic, but that's not a possibility. And especially, I guess, in a country like USA, where a sandwich also comes wrapped in cling film. So what I do with the cling? So do you think changing that approach would appeal to the consumers more than making sound? Because it's a challenge for any of us to live without plastic.
That is really fascinating aspect of plastics that you have touched upon. And at the outset, I did say that when we cause plastic pollution, it's unintentional. And it's not that we want to create this problem, but creating that awareness that there are downstream problems. If you use plastics and dispose them in a way that is not responsible, then you create problems. So we are not saying that plastic is bad. It has helped make our life a lot better in many ways. Like, for instance, one of the first uses of plastics was women's stockings. In India, we had the big revolution where they helped make saris, for instance, and clothes affordable because of the conversion from transition from cotton to polyester kind of fabrics. So plastics are, as you say, are not bad, and I don't think it's our intention to say that plastics are bad. The way we dispose them has to be responsible, and that is what we are, trying to advocate all the time. Is we have to find better ways of disposing with plastic, or repurposing, or reusing them. So refuse might be a little bit of a problem. I think that is a great idea. But you have to have, it's not affordable to everyone. Like, people can say that they only want biodegradable bags, but to the common man, some of these products are not affordable. So we have to think of clever ways of using refuse along with the other 3 R's.
Yeah, I agree with Joaquim, and also I also think that's a great question. Yes, this plastic being used is because it is durable, it's cheap, inexpensive, and also many functions that are being very good for the environment, for the the people's usage, and to support for different purpose. So that's why it was about like over the past probably like starting from 1913 and into the 1960s, there was a lot of the plastic being designed, being created. So and the purpose is try to use that for different of the things, and the industry love it. And so there currently there was for the in toxicity studies. Some of the weather plastics does have troubles to causing, because they are have, for example, the gradients like the phthalate and also like BPA, bisphenol A. Those compounds was being added into the plastics, and so when they are making these polymers, these are the endocrine disruptors. They potentially can also cause the troubles for the health after they are being released in environments. So I agree with you that it's that it's not only we need to think about study the plastics, make the plastic more green, but also a better way is also to actually to reuse and recycle, so that whatever comes to the environment, we can collect it back. And the one of the I see a lot of questions coming from chat, and which is I appreciate that. I don't know whether we can answer all the questions. However, one thing is that it's really related to the not only just the researchers but also the school high school students or elementary school students, from the middle school students and also college students. They're working together, and the whole society need to work together. Not only the education part, but also the policy part will also play a key role in this ways, and also economically. And so this is a really a questions not only to the academic, but also coming into the questions for the almost all aspects of the society, like from the environmental law to the environment, the engineering, to that, academic, to the health components, to the, to all these things need to come in together to fight these pollutions. And clearly, if it's leading to the environment, which that's not going to good for the earth, for the future generations, because as I mentioned to you, microplastics became a nanoplastics, and then they are affecting people's health and the future, and also, and we are really right now study whether our environment, for example, in the air, do we see these nanoplastics in the air? Is actually after we get it in, do we actually, the people, do we get that future problem? For example, we know that neurodegeneration disease will increase dramatically over the past 50 years. This is aligned perfectly with the increase of the productions of the plastic and the usage. Is that have any way? Is that because of that we also cause the trouble for the human health? So really, we need to really putting a lot of effort to study it. So that's why I'm saying this is a long journey for everyone.
There is a really good question here from Sai Kumar, J. Sai Kumar, who says, will plastic bag bans increase or decrease the use of other plastic products? And I think that raises what that plastic bag ban does in my communities is it raises awareness and allows people to feel actually as if they are contributing to the health of the environment when they bring their own bags to go shopping, etc. It also helps to raise awareness about things like plastic bottles. With students, I like to work with them about even the awareness of, do they really need to drink Coca-Cola and Pepsi? I mean, it's one of those things that keeps growing in terms of raising awareness. And I think a forum like this is really wonderful because, yes, as Ms. Puri says, plastics are not inherently bad. They've helped us quite a bit, but we have too much of a good thing. And we do need to solve this problem. And the best way to solve it is to raise awareness and get people active and involved. And in some ways, you have to make plastic the evil participant in this because it is going to impact our health, as Dr. Yan just pointed out. So it can sound like it's an evil situation, but it really needs to be on the forefront of our young people's minds right now.
So one of the issues with plastic bags that Beizhan mentioned is that in many countries, it's used as a way to dispose of organic waste. Things that you produce at home. And I feel that, if at that stage we, let people know that, this not being able to segregate this plastic from the organic waste is a big problem because inevitably when this waste gets to these landfills, the organic matter decays because of bacteria, but this plastic takes a long time. And inevitably, many of these companies, when they're faced with this mounting problems of plastic waste, the first thing they do is incinerate it. And that incineration brings a whole load of problems. There's atmospheric pollution and many carcinogens are released. And, if you do a simple project around a waste treatment plant, I'm sure that you'll find that people living around that waste downstream of that waste treatment plant will have higher incidences of cancer or respiratory diseases. So one of the things that we have to advocate is to prevent the use of these plastic bags for, disposing of organic waste from households. And here the government has to step in and come up with a solution like biodegradable bags made available to everyone. And this has already been started in countries like Japan. Many European countries are advocating the same formula. It has not caught up in the United States, but I think so that's the way to go, is the government has to provide incentives for this biodegradable bags be used in every household.
So New Jersey, we've started this after May 4th, all the local shops, the vendors, including big shops that we have here, they will not give us plastic bags, because before you know it, we have 3 plastic bags because they want to put in all the things, and then us consumers, there's so many other things going on. I think regulation or regulate, it should be the first R. Before anything comes in. So I think that's again something that Professor Goes just mentioned, that how can the government regulate all these things and can produce biodegradable bags so that we can put in our organic produce. Composting, I know, is big in India and in some communities here in New Jersey, New York. I think those things are very easy to do at the household level. Maybe one last question. We are almost, again, we can continue this really important discussion forever because such a pertinent issue, but we will get more chances. Maybe one chance for J. Sai Kumar, and then we can, have a second discussion later on. You have your hand up, Sai Kumar. Okay, probably not. Was it a mistake? I'm not sure.
Yeah, if you go to any Indian town, when I go home to Goa, for instance, one of the first things that catches my eye as I'm driving along home from the airport to my home is about the plastic bags that you see along the roadside. Yeah. And, there's an easy solution to that, as Radhika just mentioned, regulate the use of plastics. And that will bring an end to this problem where you see all these plastic bags on the roadside, which is aesthetically not appealing. If you look at the garbage collection bins that they place on the roadside, they're full of plastic bags, and all of them contain household waste. So if you prevent the use of those plastics in the first place, if you stop providing these plastic bags, people will look at other means of disposing the organic waste. Maybe they'll use the organic waste for composting instead of disposing it off.
This can be easily, the worst is to have organic waste all bundled up in a plastic bag and used for incineration. We can use it in our gardens. We can use it for so many different purposes. We don't have to buy all this, expensive soil everywhere. And I think many schools in Telangana are doing composting, which is great. I think Preeti ma'am has a question, and then we can continue.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I just have 2 things. You spoke about, these plastic biodegradable garbage bags. So I just want to know, are these the black bags we're talking about? Because they look like plastic, but it says on top that these are biodegradable. Is there a possibility like that?
Yeah, biodegradable generally are the green bags which say biodegradable. The only caveat there is that you can't biodegrade it in a home composting, because it is not a commercial composting facility that we have. They are only, at least the ones that I'm familiar with, are only composted in a commercial facility, but they are much better than the black bags, which are not compostable at all, and then they are incinerated, and we know all the challenges with that.
Okay. And my second question was, I just wanted to see, in India now we see a lot of plastic bags being replaced with some kind of a permeable material, which doesn't feel like plastic, but I have a horrible feeling that that is synthetic too. Is that true? Do you have any idea what that's called? It's very common.
Okay, yeah, the net. So when we buy onions here, it comes with a netted bag, and we don't know whether how much plastic it has or not.
Right. No, I'm not talking about this. Is like a regular shopping bag. I don't know what's that material called, but I have a terrible feeling that it is not, not plastic. It also has some element of plastic.
Right.
But
Unless
let me
it's
find out.
completely biodegradable, and what is the composition, I do generally do a search online to see, because many companies are doing greenwashing. They just make these green bags and we think that they are biodegradable. In the whole thing, they will not mention anywhere. Maybe they are reusing the plastic from the consumers, which is still okay. But if I am looking for biodegradable, we will really have to go through all the different, do our own search, be really confident that they are biodegradable. And where are they biodegradable? Then we have to look for a commercial composting facility where they are biodegradable. So lots of things there on how companies, we have to be very vigilant as a consumer on how we are consuming all these things, and better to use things that we already have at home. I just take instead of buying a biodegradable bag, I just take my composting, small kitchen to my facility. I mean, to my composting box, compost. I think lots of things we can do here. And one thing I just want to share here is one of the challenges we've come up with. We require a lot of student participation and lot of teachers also, if they can take up this challenge here from what we've come up with, to see it's all about satellite images and looking at the nearby landfills. That helps to see how much plastic it contains, and so making that really visible and up close, that we are not throwing away this garbage that goes to some other community and we are fine because our community is clean. No, every community is our community, and we see where this landfill is and how it's impacting us, because the air we breathe is also in if garbage is incinerated in a community, it can come to us.
Radhika, I have one thing to add.
Yes, please.
So I know the time is there, but I think that a lot of questions about this biodegradable and bioplastics. So we appreciate that these efforts, and we think that potentially we're changing the formula and then pushing that became a more green the usage for the plastics. However, one thing we need to be sure is, are those biodegradable plastics are really environmentally friendly? So in terms of that, we have a lot of the history and also lessons we got from previously. For example, we talk about the flame retardant compounds. First, we started use the industry use the PCBs and then use the others. And turns out that they are the replacement of these previous versions of the flame retardant is also the same thing. It's even sometimes even more toxic. So in terms of this, this biodegradable and bioplastics, one thing I would encourage the students also to think about it. If you replace this one with replace relatively, less toxicity with even higher toxicity biodegradable ones, then you have environment to be even more trouble, right? So before we really starting to use these things, we need to really get a good, toxicity study to figure out the products, the weathering products, and also the degraded, plastics. They are really environment friendly? And if not, how we can actually deal with it. So our environments, we have a lot of these lessons that, as I mentioned before, it is we need to take the precaution steps rather than just jump into a field that is we are not quite sure. So until we really do a lot of experiments, figured out this biodegradable and the bioplastic one are really environmental friendly, then we can do the switching. Before that, I think still it's a good practice that more recycle, do more reuse, will be more, the prudent work to do. That's my comments from the environmental, chemists that we have. We know that all these things happens again and again, and we want to be sure that so something replace the plastic will be also environmental friendly.
That is very important to know, and I hope everyone has got that message. Also, so thanks, Dr. Yan, for sharing that important message. We need to really know the environmental impacts of even biodegradable materials before we jump into purchasing those. I think that's really important for all of us to know. And I think this really has been a fascinating discussion to get the science involved, to see the activism, to see teachers' activism, student activism. I think we have that. I think we have reached a tipping point where we are really understanding what's going on. But we all need to be more aware, and the whole purpose of this discussion, and we carry on these discussions as we go along with our eco ambassadors work, is that education really is the tool to go forward. And how much learning can we get? How can we now use technology to bridge this gap, learn from each other, spread this message from non-formal, informal, and also formal ways of learning and education? I think this is the way to go about things, and we really need to bring this up as a campaign. There are many isolated, wonderful examples going on. I think we all need to come together to bring this forward and learn from all our experiences and learn from the experts here. Thank you, Professor Goes and Professor Yan, for sharing your expertise. We really value it, because otherwise we feel that we are all isolated and doing our bit, but we are on our own to gather the information. So this was a great session to have, and hope to continue these sessions going forward so that we can learn from your research and science and see the extent of where we can go and what is the direction that we need to take to control plastic pollution. Thank you, Srinivas, for joining, and also for gathering all of our Telangana folks here. Really appreciate everyone. Delhi, I think there are some people from Rajasthan as well. Thank you, Deborah, for joining. So wonderful session, and I think we are over time, and it's hard to conclude this really important session, but we need to have a second round, and hopefully sometime soon after we do our experiments and after we do our activism, let's gather together and share all our ideas based on what we've been able to do, and then we'll continue working on this on a much larger scale. So thank you so much for joining the session today. Really appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you, Radhika, for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.